And I am going to call to order the regular meeting of the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority Community Oversight Committee of August 25th, 2025. And then I think, Martina, we can go to roll call.
Certainly. Before we begin the roll call, at this time, I would like to inform the committee that member Pat Randolph has joined us remotely in accordance with the Brown Act as amended by AB 2449. Pat is attending remotely due to medical issues, which qualifies as just cause under the provisions of the Act. Pat, for the record, are there any individuals over the age of 18 present with you at your location? We can't hear you, Pat. You're muted.
There are no individuals with me.
Perfect. With that confirmation, we may proceed with Pat's participating remotely as an attendee if it pleases the committee. Okay, and then just so you know, as a reminder, per the requirements of the Brown Act, we will conduct a roll call vote for each voting action on today's agenda with Pat being remote. Okay, and now to proceed with roll, Rebecca Suggs.
Yes, she was muted, but she's here.
Scott Pinsky.
Present.
Theo Hellman.
Here.
Larry Minikis.
Present.
Pat Randolph.
Present.
John McCauley.
I'm here.
It looks like Vice Chair Jim Wagner has not arrived yet for the afternoon, but he will be here shortly, and Chair Jenny Biggs.
Here.
Perfect. And we do have a forum.
Great. Okay, so we can move on to agenda adjustments. So everybody, I hope, had a chance to review. Are there any adjustments to the agenda? And then open time for public expression, but is there anybody out there?
There is no public currently in the room remotely. Just for the sake of the minutes, I will go ahead and read the open time for public suggestion or expression. The public is welcome to address the Community Oversight Committee at this time on matters not on the agenda that are within the jurisdiction of the committee. Please be advised that pursuant to the Government Code Section 54954.2, the committee is not permitted to discuss or take action on any matter not on the agenda. Comments may be no longer than 2 minutes in length and should be respectful to the community. Please silence your cell phones during the meeting and mute your microphone when not reporting out. I will let you know, Chair, if anyone comes to the meeting so that we don't have to take public comment going into the room.
Okay, so I think we're ready for executive officers staff report.
It's been a while since we've had a COC meeting, so welcome back. And I will express how, even though we haven't had a COC meeting, there's been quite a bit of work been going on. I've been meeting with different subcommittees of the COC to discuss different items. You guys closed out the last fiscal year with momentum, and you've kept that momentum going. So I really appreciate that. And I'm trying to make sure that A, Marin Wildfire, or B, Marin Wildfire member agencies don't hurt your momentum. But there will be, you know, we still have to work through 17 agencies of reporting information. So we'll get through that. But for your information requests that come to Marin Wildfire staff specifically, the stuff that I can answer or help facilitate, I'm trying to work my hardest to make sure that you guys can maintain that momentum that you've had. Busy that last couple of months. As you probably remember, following the LA fires in January, one of the things the governor did was launch some exemptions for regulatory processes. And so we have applied for a governor's exemption for our work in the coastal zone. What's important to note about that exemption is it doesn't bypass any of the regulatory processes. It just sped them up and put the state agencies on a 30-day clock. Once we applied, they had to meet that 30-day clock in order to get us approved. So we've been approved for several projects in West Marin. They're on our project site. You can see exactly what they are. We are following all regulatory processes. We just did it in an expedited fashion. That's coupled with our upcoming public works plan through the Coastal Commission. What a public works plan is, it's a streamlined approval process to get a coastal permit to do work. So where this lines up with our governor's exemption is that we're executing our work under the governor's exemption, but that exemption only lasts 2 years. So the plan is for the PWP process to pick up any projects that we start once the PWP is approved, and then maintenance of the projects that we are doing under the exemption. Once the PWP is in place and we are doing maintenance on those projects, that's where CEQA will come into effect, and then we'll go through the appropriate CEQA processes. A couple big projects that got approved at the last board meeting. One is the Greater Mill Valley Fuel Break, so 20-something miles around Mill Valley, and we use a lot of our new modeling tools to help shape that, but also great collaboration with Marin County Parks and Marin Water about where some of their projects are lining up with what our analysis says we should be working on. So we've been able to kind of double up on where the work is. You utilize some of Marin Water's resources to get work done, and also some Measure A funding will help be able to get some of the work done in Mill Valley. And then, so that was what's called a project-specific analysis through the California Vegetation Treatment Program, which is a statewide programmatic environmental impact report. That's our fourth project-specific analysis through the Cal VTP. And then we just did, it's a first for Marin Wildfire environmentally. We just passed an initial studies mitigated negative declaration. I know you've probably been part of that at city council stuff. For Santa Fe Hill and Deer Valley, both those projects that Santa Fe had approved by our board, the work that we were planning on them exceeded what a notice of exemption could get us done. So we went down to initial studies mitigated neg deck route. And so that was the first big step for us to go through that. So the good news is that CEQA has not really turned into a burden for Marin Wildfire. We've hired the right people, we have the right staff, we have been able to navigate the CEQA process to the point where we're efficient, and we do not feel that it's slowing down our work. So we're very pleased about that. We had our, you probably know, we had our executive committee meeting and our board of directors meeting, all went well. You may have heard during those meetings that we are now embarking on creating our measures of success for goal 4. It's the final goal for us out of our 5 to get our measures of success. Goal 4 is public outreach and education. So we're working through that process now. With that, that's going to be our halfway point through Marin Wildfire. So we are scheduling an offsite retreat for the ops committee to kind of have a midpoint analysis of where Marin Wildfire is, where we're going. After we get goal 4 finalized, that's when we'll have an offsite retreat for the board. And for the, Larry, you may remember this when we had our first, and also Pat and Rebecca, when we did our first strategic planning, the COC was invited to participate in that strategic planning. So when we do the midstream strategic planning, the COC will be invited again as well. And we are also working on a draft for request for proposals for our public outreach and education, which is Fire Safe Marin is who we are currently contracting with. Very likely that they are the best suited partner for us, but through that RFP process, it's really evaluating and allowing us to evaluate where we are with public outreach and education. And should some of those positions or efforts that we asked Fire Safe Marin to do, would we be better served to have them within Marin Wildfire instead of having Fire Safe Marin? So through the drafting of the RFP, it's really getting us to analyze that and come to a conclusion. And it'll be a process through our work plan for 26-27 that'll help us land to what that's going to look like. And with that, I'll take any questions.
I have one question.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So just when the retreats are for the ops committee and the board, what time of year?
It'll be later in September for the ops. We're still finalizing the date and time. I anticipate November-ish for the board.
And then my only other question was on the question of like bringing the public outreach and education piece potentially inside Marin Wildfire. Does that mean more staff, or is that with the existing staff?
It would probably be more staff.
Just any update on the ranger question that you brought from?
I've asked both Santa Fe and Nevada to work on the data collection, and we have through like the end of September, October to get that to the board. So we're working on it.
Mark, so we know the challenge in West Marin is we have a smaller tax base and a larger area to cover, and also it's much more expensive. So with these additions, with the governor's addition and with the PWP, is there analysis, or will there be an analysis done as to how that is lowering costs, making the work more efficient? So per dollar goes further, I guess is my question.
So when it comes to a little bit of staff time, probably, but we're still having to go through the biological reviews and stuff like that. So we will do an analysis, but my gut says it's not going to decrease the cost significantly.
Okay. What will it actually do? Speed up the work?
Yep. Allow us to get the work started sooner.
Right. Okay, thanks.
And we did overfund or superfund or however, stretch an extra 500,000 into West Marin above the normal allocations, knowing that we had the governor's exemption to be able to take advantage and then utilize Marin Wildfire's resources to take advantage of that strategic opportunity.
And you've already got built in the idea that each of the zones is supposed to expend at least 80% of their revenues, right? So, that extra 20% or maybe 5% for one of the larger zones will be quite substantial to West Marin because of its.
And it was exactly that flexibility that we used. For 200,000, it was that flexibility. For 300,000, what we did is we looked at our strategic reserve. And your strategic reserves are really for what the organization's burden could be if something happens. Our strategic reserve was set at 15% of our total budget. But what we realized is that really the Marin Wildfire's burden for needing a strategic reserve is only for our core. We don't really need it for the D space. We don't really need it for local. So we decided to drop our strategic reserve to only to the 60% core. And that freed up 900,000 that was in our strategic reserve that could be used for projects. So we took 300,000 and put it towards West Marin. And instead of just jumping immediately for the other 600,000, we're going to wait for the right opportunity to put that 600,000.
And I'll mention one more thing, since you mentioned San Rafael Hill, which is where I live, the Sunday before last, we had a nice fire literally above my house, literally about 150 yards above my house. 3 pieces of fire equipment, a fire hose running right down my driveway, so it was very close to home. We've had maybe 10 fires since I've lived there, maybe more. We've had more fires in that hill than I think anywhere else in Marin. I actually welcome them most of the time because I know it's reducing fuels, but I just thought I'd mention that part as well. Yeah, always a little bit of excitement. Oh, and what I did mention in the meeting was that I said to my wife, don't worry about it. First, there wasn't any wind, but I said all the work was done above. I assumed they actually went in, and it was 50 feet by about 160 feet by about 150 feet. They went in deep brush to knock it down. But the last fire we had last year, I forget now, was to the left of us and another 100 yards down, and that did go to the top, and it's where the work had already been done, and so it just literally burned itself out. It was very controlled.
And we did do a site visit following that fire, so we could see the fire effects in the treated area. And when you walk in there, you just look around and you went, this is a really healthy fire.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Any other comments or questions?
I'll just mention that one thing I'm looking forward to is an analysis of the picket fire, because the picket fire did burn into several veg management projects that were put on by Napa Firewise. And so I'm looking forward to see what type of change in fire behavior occurred in those areas.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Apparently it didn't hit any vineyards that I read about, did it?
The last newspaper article I read was that the smoke did not blow through the vineyards and they expect a good crop.
Well, I actually heard a guy on the news yesterday saying that it did go through his vineyards, the smoke that is.
Okay.
And he considers his entire crop toast for the season. But I hadn't heard that any vineyards themselves had actually been affected.
My understanding is they were not.
Yeah, so that's at least lucky there.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Are we good online?
There are no hands for comment.
And no-
No.
Okay, so I think we could go to the consent calendar then. And we only have one item, which is the minutes from our May last meeting. So if anyone wants to make a motion to approve that.
I'll move to.
I'll second.
Okay,
That's a motion by Larry Minikis with a second from John McCauley. Because Theo is a non-voting member of this committee, we will start with Scott Painski for the vote.
Aye.
Rebecca Suggs.
Aye.
Suggs. Pat Randolph.
What are we voting on?
We're voting on the minutes now, Pat.
Oh,
We've voted the
May.
minutes.
okay. Aye.
Larry Minikis,
Aye.
John McCauley,
Aye.
and Chair Biggs.
aye.
And so motion passes with unanimous vote of all in attendance today.
Thank you. Pat, is your audio okay? Can you hear us? Do we need to speak up for you?
Can you hear us, Pat?
I can hear you, but those in the room are a little more muffled when you are not facing the
Microphone.
camera, the whatever this is.
Okay.
But for the most part, I can hear you fine.
We'll be sure to speak louder.
Is that the microphone?
Yeah.
There, okay. Okay, so I think we can go to the annual report committee, and we are up first, Rebecca, with our local report. We did not circulate a draft. We are waiting for the staff reports end of September. I think we'll get those in, and we just didn't want to take up your time reviewing the draft until we have those. But I can give you a quick rundown on the approach that we're taking, which is to pick areas that had not been looked at carefully before from the full list of the different local districts that we could have chosen. So we picked Sleepy Hollow, Fairfax, Bolinas, Muir Beach, and Novato. And then went through and asked a series of questions for those that really drew on what we had talked about from last year as part of the template. In doing that, we didn't see any big concerns about any of the projects that we saw in those areas. But we talked with Mark a little bit about some of the questions that we had. Things like, do staff have a list of vetted contractors that they share with these jurisdictions? And that was my question. I'm just curious, because I know when I get different bids for, work at our own house, sometimes there's that Marin fluff, the price premium that gets inserted. And if you keep asking enough people, you can have a wide variation. And so I was just kind of curious about how these contractors are curated, just in the interest of sort of expenditure responsibility, and then how they're chosen. So, we're excited to see how that sort of list of completed projects and portions comes together. Any best practices that have been created from working with different contractors. And then there was also a question that Rebecca had specific to the Muir Beach project in support of Firewise communities. And Rebecca, I don't know if you wanted to mention that for the group or just save it for our written documentation.
Well, so I'll just, since it's been mentioned, I'll just go ahead and say that it was interesting to see that Muir Beach, which had a small budget to start with, chose to use a chunk of it to support their Firewise community. And I just thought that was interesting. And I think it'll be interesting to see what we hear back if I'm assuming we will hear a response back from them about how it got used, why, etc. I was pleasantly surprised to see that Firewise communities came up at all in the context of local projects. So I think it'll be, I think it could be a conversation starter as well.
Well, thank you. It's been fun to work with Rebecca on this. So that's where ours stands, and we should have a draft for circulation after the end of September when we get that report, and we'll get that out. But the gold star goes to the Defensible Space team who got their draft to us and circulated.
our
So
draft on,
yeah,
yeah.
so everybody has a chance to have read that. And I don't know if you wanted to provide any highlights.
Yeah, I mean, basically, we just have a couple of open items that I don't think we just haven't gotten to yet, right? That we need to sit down with Mark and get some more evidence on. There's little bubbles that kind of describe those things. And we had two high-level questions we thought would be interesting at this point. And it's, as we discussed previously, we don't set policy, right? You know, that's the job of the board. But separate from that, if we see things of interest, we can raise those things of interest. And we have a couple of interesting questions. So we're halfway down the line here, and we have 3 different models, right? You got a full-time model, you have a part-time and full-time model, and so everyone does it slightly differently. And so our first question was, okay, you've got great data at this juncture, and we asked whether a study had been done yet, and as it has not been done yet, we suggested it would be good to do it now, and that study would be looking at costs within the 3 different approaches to see whether there's any significant cost differential. And separately from that, because you have a lot of data on performance, you know, like when an inspection is done, who's opening the inspections, who's doing the work and all that, because it's not just money, it's also performance. And we're just asking, are there any indicia from those halfway points that would indicate that things should be done differently? We have no view, we just thought it would be good to study. And we would encourage the board to direct staff to perform such a study. So that's our first observation. The second observation is that it's interesting the way it works, because many, especially in the DSA, that those costs are allocated on a per capita basis to each individual inspection. And each city has a different condition with the way the revenues are raised, right? So it's always, 10 cents a square foot, I think? So with inflation. So, and each house, I believe is just charged the same, whether it's a big house or a small house, because you just walk around at once, right? So if you look at last year's report, there are cities which have different levels of rollover and expenditures, right? And the question at this point is, okay, if you have a goal by city to say, I want to inspect every 3 years or whatever it is, and you're halfway through, you can do the math now to have a sense for where you'll be at the end. And it would be good to know now where you would be, because if in fact you were going to underspend, well, there's some flexibility in the D-space component of our 2020-60. So you could anticipate that and start spending money on related projects now. Conversely, if you realize you're going to be short, right, to meet your goal, you could use some of your local money to do that funding. So we're just suggesting a measurement be done at this juncture to see kind of where you are roughly, you know, as to whether that would direct individual cities to do things any differently. So that's our second potential recommendation. And the third one just deals with, we just haven't had a chance to sit down and understand the vehicle strategy yet. And it could be just literally fine. Once we have a chance to talk, we may have no finding, we'll just build it into our documents. But that's kind of where we are in a nutshell.
So if you had an overrun, an underrun, so to speak, and a surplus in any given city for what these space activities are costing, you said you could apply it to something else? What else would you apply it to? So
within the measure, and you can see it in the documents if you go to last year's report, the language around D-space spending was not just for inspections, it's for elements which increase the areas of defensible space within your community. So that gives you enough flexibility that you could do like some of the stuff Nevada's doing now. Well, Nevada's doing a lot of really good work, I think, you know, going to medians and, you know, clearing this and clearing that. So if there are extra funds available and you can anticipate them, they can be used effectively because the language was not so narrow that it was restrictive.
Go pass out vents or something like that.
It could be home hardening grants, could be D-space grants.
I was gonna say, grants would be sort of a logical thing to think of.
How,
That's a lot of administration.
okay, so with the accounting brain, like what are the risks of projecting an underspend and the projections are wrong? How do you handle that? Do you build like a buffer in?
Yeah, or you get to the end and you still have flexibility because you still have local.
Okay.
So there's enough room to, as long as you see it coming, you can react to that.
Okay.
Yeah. There is one other thing I'd lay up at a 50,000 foot level, which may or may not be of interest to people. And that deals with the question of grants, right? Because we have grants both in core and we have some grants that are in local. And we have learned in the past that there is a method such that there's a single database, so you don't double dip or triple dip. I've always been a little interested in whether that, those expenditures in total are particularly material to the overall, 20 million we raise every year. In that, to a certain degree, if I use my local money for grants, it's kind of lazy, you know what I mean? If it became a materially large component of our overall expenditures, I might say, was that really what the voters thought they were voting for? I don't know whether there's any interest in pursuing that. It doesn't fall in any of the three categories. It's kind of an overall question. So I just lay that out there for your consideration, and maybe we'll look at it as we progress along. And once we get a sense for what the total expenditure level is it very much, Mark, when it's all said and done, if you added up, expenditures which come out of core and local?
Between core and local D-space for grants, direct assistance, and voluntary abatement, for lack of a better word,
Yeah.
is about 2.55 million for fiscal year 24-25.
So that's pretty precise number. So about 10% roughly of your total. Well, maybe it's no big deal, So all we would say, by the way, would be we'd ask the board to consider it. That's not our job to second guess the board. But if the board is aware of that, then maybe I just retract the whole thing and say, don't worry about it. So how about we do that? Let's not worry about it.
And the reason why I know that number off the top of my head is that we've actually done an analysis and shared that with the board.
Okay, if the board's looked into it and they understand it, then I retract all of that conversation.
What's the voluntary abatement piece? Sorry that you just.
So abatement is, let's say your house is not up to local code.
Yeah.
We can get a right to enter that's court ordered, do the work, and then put a lien on your property tax. That's very intensive labor wise.
Yeah.
A voluntary abatement is, hey, can we come on your property? We'll pay for the work and maybe even cut a deal with you. You pay for this half, we'll pay for that half. And we found it's a lot easier to do the voluntary abatement than this.
And that's happened?
Yeah.
It happened a lot.
Not a lot, but it's happened.
Interesting.
Like we'll go to whether through modeling or through experience, and you go, that's the house that's going to burn this community down. We've done it.
I was gonna say, you gotta be pretty selective to go to that level, I would
Yep.
imagine.
Yeah, you
But that's
used to have
great
a
to
certain
have
amount of
that
money reserved.
The 2%, yes.
And you've removed that now.
Because that was for abatements.
Right.
The court
The legal
ordered abatements,
costs,
and no, since Marin Wildfire has been around, I know of 2.
Okay. Wow. Interesting.
Okay. Right. Sorry, Jim wasn't here to do that, but
Thank you.
he's worked hard on this. So.
Hey, yes.
Thank you very much. Okay, so moving on to core, if you all wanted to give us a little bit of an overview. I know you've worked on the questions and had some back and forth with Mark. If there's anything that you wanted to highlight right now on that.
I don't have a whole lot to report, unfortunately. I'm obviously the new guy, so I'm still coming up to speed, but I don't know if Pat or Larry want to chime in.
Pat, I have actually not done anything on it.
So to sort of bring everybody up to speed, I had spine surgery and didn't go quite as well as was expected, so that I was I went from the hospital to a skilled nursing facility and am at home now, but still can't walk. So I had sent out some questions and pointed out to the group where they could find each one of the projects, and then the lesson learned for me was I did that at the end of May, and I should have spent the entire month of June writing the report, because come the end of June, then I was laid up for a long time. But something interesting that or something I've observed before, and I had just started printing up the reports or the core projects. And one thing I noticed in the central Marin zone, there is a Greater Ross Valley shaded fuel break where they have given $862,409 to defensible space. And I've noticed before projects, either local or core, giving some of their money to defensible space. And I wonder if, what that says. Does it say that defensible space doesn't have enough money? What's the implication of people voluntarily giving their core money to defensible space? And just something to think about. And as we move along, I will have further thoughts on that. But that's really all I have to report right now. And I have talked to Jenny about this. She knows the problems we were working under, and because Scott is brand new and couldn't function on his own. And I didn't hear back from Larry, so we will just see where it goes from here. But I'm certainly now willing to help as far as I can. Thoughts, comments?
Well, welcome home, first of all, Pat. And thank you so much. And any questions from the community?
Yeah, Pat, how about if we suggest you, I, and Scott time maybe when it's good for you to get together?
Okay.
Based on you. And we'll set up a Zoom call between us. I'll be in Oregon next week, but that doesn't matter. I'll still have internet.
Okay.
Yeah, so, sorry, with the D-space expenditures, which group was that? Was that Nevada?
The Central Marin Corps has a $267,000 core budget to help provide funding for the inspection program.
So does the DSA?
Yeah.
Does the DSA? Okay, we'll need to understand that.
We did, and this has been a consistent project for them for the past 3 years, I think. And
So that's in addition to the monies which are generated already at the 20% level?
Correct.
Okay, so where do they end up in terms of rollover? Are they inspecting like everything every week? I mean, how does that math out? We can take it offline and understand.
Yeah, and actually Southern Marin and West Marin actually have been contributing more. I mean, the point that Pat's making is 20% in the D space enough, and the agencies participating in the DSA did not feel it was, so they have been providing more funding towards it.
Okay, but we still have rollover.
Correct, and it's true, and we do have the accounting for that.
Okay, we'll take it offline. Just want to make sure I understand how that math works, right? So, okay, thanks, Pat.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. And keep us posted too if there's backup help needed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I back into your report, John? Because you brought up vehicles, and it did bring up an interesting question about whether they should be purchased, where they should be leased.
I haven't even looked into it all yet. We just haven't had a chance to talk about it.
And
That's exactly what we want to understand.
Right, and so what I was gonna suggest is, it would seem that it should come out of Mark's, out of your office, a formula that each jurisdiction could use. It's standardized. It could be AI, whatever, that says, here's all our criteria. We're gonna use it for this many miles, we're using it for this purpose, blah, blah, blah. Put it all out there and then do the calculations so that it's all in-house and one over here isn't buying a bunch of vehicles and the other one isn't. Just a thought, it's not our decision point to decide whether they should lease or buy, but is there a way to make it more standard throughout the
That's what we're gonna pursue.
program?
And whether they're using existing vehicles.
All of it.
Right,
All of
so,
it.
yeah, because I mean, rent goes that way too, right? 2 of the 3 don't have to charge rent because they already have buildings and the buildings would be there either way, so they don't,
Right.
do a cost allocation, which I think is a good thing. And the third group is like, hey, we don't have any room, so we have to be somewhere. So, that's specifically what we want to look into.
Right, and Measure C didn't really specify what could be spent on capital, on equipment versus
No,
on the ground staffing and such, and whether going forward, whether some sort of recommendation should be suggested, X% should go to actually doing the work. I don't know the answer. And what you don't want to do is tie up anyone's hands at the same time. But it's a thought.
Anything else before we move on? Got our board monitoring committees up next. Did anybody, I forget who was assigned to what, do you have that preference, Mark, but executive, does everybody remember where they're assigned?
idea.
I
Oh,
went to
really?
both of
Okay,
them.
Mark, could you help us?
I'm pulling
Here's
it up.
Mark pulling in with the tape. Super Mark. Sorry.
I just go and attend them.
Okay, everyone note this time which committee we're supposed to be monitoring.
All right. Board is Jim and Rebecca. Exec is Scott and Larry.
Oh.
Operations is Jenny and
No, you're
Pat.
Great.
And finance is Mr. Picard.
Okay,
So maybe, Martina, when the agendas go out, since you know when the meetings are gonna be, you might just send us a little reminder like this meeting's happening in the state, you might want to be aware of it,
Okay, so.
I'll
would-
send this spreadsheet to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you guys would like to be a part of the agenda distribution for the
Yeah,
corresponding.
Just remind us
board
that
monitoring.
you always can catch it on video later, which I've done a number of times. But it would be nice to just we're busy people and it's hard to remember. So it might just be helpful to say executive committee's meeting next week and you're up.
I do have to, hot tip for anyone who misses it, of course, if you watch it on the recording, you can speed it up.
Right,
Yep.
Which is helpful on the
Yeah.
busy people.
Which is modern life.
exactly.
But I could give a brief executive committee report, which actually ties directly into the board report, which is very much the same as the meat of it was, Ann and crew gave a very good discussion on the Greater Mill Valley Fuel Break project and also on the San Rafael Deer Valley fuel reduction program. Very detailed, really appreciate all the information that's being put out there for the board, for staff and for the public. And I don't have anything specific on it to give you, but what is interesting is it's starting to feel like these big projects are coming in and we're ready for them. We're not trying to figure out how to go, we figured it out, we as an agency. I don't wanna be the we here, but you get my point, is that it just, that's what I didn't say when I did speak up, was that's what I really noticed, is that this is really starting to come into its own, where most of the other jurisdictions are still trying to figure out the basics, the building blocks, and we're already moving into real important projects, that hopefully are gonna pay a benefit one day to us, and we'll see the outcome of these in the future. So that's what I have to offer.
Great Mill Valley, by the way, I looked at it and it was a big squishy little map. I just looked at it on my phone. Is there like a one with street names on it that?
I believe the interactive map,
Yeah,
I'll double check, but the interactive map you should be able to zoom.
yeah, I think you can go online and do all of that.
Maybe I didn't do it right, okay.
Yeah.
Jim, you did a great job.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Your report out was awesome.
You did get props. So, you know, okay.
Do we need to do anything on roll call?
This is a non-voting item, so
Okay, sorry, I meant official meeting roll call, just to recognize that we have our.
yeah, actually, thank you so much, Chair, to please let the minutes reflect that Vice Chair Wagner did arrive at the meeting at 3:44 p.m.
And everyone lived happily ever. All right, thank you, Larry. Scott, anything you wanted to add? Is that committee?
No, I'm watching from the sidelines and trying to absorb it, but good summary, I think.
All right, so board of directors, Jim and Rebecca. Oh, Pat, did you want to add something? Sorry, I saw Pat raise her hand.
Did we change the list? I thought I had board.
I think we changed the list in May, but please, if you'd like to jump in on board for now, I think you and I are now assigned to ops for future reference, which did not exist for this meeting, just because of the sequence of meetings. But I am guessing Jim and Rebecca would be happy to have your board insights too.
Why don't you guys report, and then I will mention anything that you forgot.
And I did attend, so, and Jim, if you want to give the report, I'm happy to speak up, or if you want me to, and you can speak up.
This is my first board meeting, and so it's my first report. So let me say my observations, and then feel free to revise them. It was an interesting meeting. I thought there was a lot of things they were talking about. They talked about the what was in your report, Mark, about the San Rafael, the little deer, and that they're going to do the controlled burns right in the middle of the city, and that type of stuff is quite interesting. I think the other thing that I would report is that there are plans to have mid-course, mid-decade, what do they call them, off-site meetings, which I guess is a retreat for a lot of the different boards, which I think is a fabulous idea. And it's one of the things that we came up with as our recommendations, is kind of take a mid-course look to see if there's any mid-course corrections that need to be made. That's all I thought that would be of interest to this group. Anything to add, Rebecca?
Yeah, well, one thing, Alyssa had reported that the finance reporting out would be ready in a month or two. Mark, do you have any insight on that? That concerns me a little bit, that are we going to report, how are we going to do the finance report, part of our report, if we need to wait for another month or two to get a look at finance?
Well, we're following our standard published timeline, and that's for all the agencies to have their data to us by September 30th.
Right. So does the information that Alyssa had to say it'll be another month or two for their financial data, is that, I mean, that's a date further out, another month in addition to, yes?
Yep.
So, and yes, that's what we've been dealing with, but I guess I thought that it would be earlier this year to see that financial data.
With 17 member agencies and the complexity of the budgets, it's not really achievable to get before that.
Yeah, okay. That
But
was
Rebecca's raising a good point here, because we're going to lose a lot of membership of us in December, right?
Yep.
So if we want to get this thing out by December, now the good news on the finance stuff is that basically it's done by staff and we just have to read it in the end. Although the CPAs never seem to get their audit done timely basis, which I don't quite understand, honestly. But it would be a bummer that we wouldn't get the report finished before we have a whole turnover of staff, of COC members in January, so.
Yeah.
And I guess that would be my point, is let's just be aware that's going to happen is the finance committee just, okay, fine, no problem, we'll handle it, speedy, boom, done. And everybody else, just make sure we've got it all sitting there ready to go when
Yeah.
ready.
But realistically, if we've got the 3 other reports done, DSpace, local and core, this would be, it's a relatively perfunctory process. So we could have the report, our COC report, basically locked and loaded by early December, because you're not gonna do anything after this second week of December, right? And then, you get a bunch of new people in, but it will be ready to issue in January, February, right?
And in theory, we could have our 3 sections locked and loaded by our October meeting, because we'll have the wrap up in September
Right,
of the information that we need, so
Right.
hopefully we're really ready to go.
right, exactly.
So there's the heads up, let's make that happen.
Yeah, thanks, Rebecca, before we lose you all. Okay, Pat, anything that you wanted to add?
I would like to add that we gave Mark a raise, I hope. And that I learned that there is such a thing as Deer Valley. I had never known. We have a San Rafael Hill and Deer Valley fuel reduction zone, and I never knew that there was a Deer Valley.
Deer Valley is just prior to McGinnis Golf Course as you go out Smith Ranch Road.
I noticed it. I looked at the map you put out, and I could see this little tiny thing there.
Okay. So I think there is no ops report right now. We are off the hook if there aren't any other questions. This one doesn't have any motion required, so we can go ahead and move to future agenda items. Does anybody have future agenda items they want to introduce? Okay, so do we need to go?
Just for that last,
Okay.
the annual report committees.
Okay, so we will go out to take public comment on the board monitoring committee reports.
Well, welcome to the meeting. For those joining us remotely, for public attendees, the public, you are welcome to address the committee at this time on on matters of the agenda. The current item is board monitoring committees. Please use *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself if you wish to deliver a comment to the Community Oversight Committee at this time. And our attendee does not appear to have a comment.
Okay, so we can bring this back for any last discussion on that subject, and then we'll move forward. Okay, so any future agenda items from anyone on the committee? I am curious about the date that we have set right now, the exact hour for the meeting. I'm supposed to be on a panel in New York. So I'm juggling. I'm curious about timing and if there's flexibility to maybe look at same time the day before or after, or same time the week following, but I say that in.
You mean on Tuesday
Yeah,
rather than a Wednesday?
or Tuesday or Thursday that week, same hour?
Thursdays are
Or the
usually
following, okay, so then Tuesday or the following week,
Okay,
Wednesday.
so we're looking at what day? I'm sorry, the 23rd?
September 23rd.
24th would be the Wednesday.
24th.
Yeah, I'm gonna be gone, so,
Anyway, no
yeah.
matter what,
yes, I'm
we
gone,
lose you no matter what.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, so you don't care.
And you're right, well, yeah, exactly, I don't return until the 26th
Oh,
of September, so.
What about then, does it mess us up if we look at October 1st?
let's look.
Not really.
Would you all be,
Works- I'm okay. I can't speak for anyone else here.
The first I'm traveling,
How about the 30th? John, are you traveling?
I think I'm just back, yeah, I'm good on the 30th.
Everyone
Anyone?
else, are you?
September
Mark?
30, we're talking about.
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
talking
we're
September
talking September
30th. I'm
30th.
sorry, we bounced
It's
back
a
and forth between
Tuesday.
those.
I unfortunately forgot my calendar, so I'm gonna have to guess, but I think that's fine.
So
I'll have to do it remotely, but I can probably make it.
okay, and I can.
So September 30.
So just to be clear for the committee members joining us remotely, it looks like for future agenda items, it has been proposed to adjust the next meeting's date from Wednesday, September 24th at 3 p.m. to Tuesday, September 30th at 3 p.m. I believe that might turn this into an action item. No? Okay, so this is not an action item, there is no vote required, but can we get confirmation from both Pat and Rebecca that Tuesday, September 30th at 3 for the next scheduled meeting would work for you?
Yes.
You know, that works for me, but we had a standard time so that we could all have it on our calendars, and I'm wondering what's happened to that besides new members having come on. And I'm not arguing with that date, but I just think it's something that we should think about. We should have a standard time to meet.
So Pat, would that be a proposition to maybe bring the regularly
Yes.
scheduled time of the meeting to next month's agenda?
Yes, that would be an agenda item to add.
So please let the minutes reflect that in addition to moving the September 24th meeting to September 30th at 3 p.m., which we have consensus from the committee that works. For next month's agenda, member Pat Randolph has proposed adding the standing time of the committee's meeting and standing date and time of the committee's meeting to the next agenda as an item.
Thank you.
And can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Rebecca.
Martina, at the beginning of the year, I think you sent out a general message or an invitation to all MWPA COC meetings. And I can't get that invitation to move. So it always goes on my calendar as being its standard date and time. Is there a way to either delete that or move it when it's been moved?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
I will make sure that the next meeting is reflected accurately on everyone's calendar.
Thank you. Lovely.
We'll see how that works on my Apple calendar. It's never seems to work.
Any other agenda items? All right, I think we can move now to adjourn the meeting.
And is this your first official meeting that you've chaired the whole meeting?
Yes, and I don't know where my gavel is.
Gotta bring her out.
Thank you. I'll slam down Mark's coffee. Yeah, and we get to wish Mark happy vacation. Thank you again for adjusting to do this for us. All right, thanks everybody. Adjourned. Meeting is adjourned.
Pat, I just sent an email to you and Scott.
Okay, thank you.